Hey Sky fam, it's your girl Ira Rose and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to go directly into how to become a flight attendant in 2024. I get a lot of questions on this, so I'm gonna go down a couple of different categories, basically all the way down to training. So let's get into it. Number one is finding the industry of flight attending that you even want to be in. There are basically two different sectors and then it breaks down a little bit in the commercial. So there's commercial and corporate. So corporate is basically like private, you're working for a family, a company, something like that. And then there's also military as well. And then commercial, that's the one that most people know. That is your major airlines and things like that. That includes everyone from the big three, the majors, the main lines, all the way down to the budget carriers and everything in between. That is all commercial, okay? When you work for any commercial carrier, there's two divisions within commercial. There is mainline or major airlines, and then there are regional airlines. Now, most people have never heard of regional airlines, which is totally fine. I didn't either until I came into the industry, honestly. And if you get directly hired by a mainline, you'll probably be in training with a number of people that have been at regionals, and you didn't know about that world either. Trust me, it's okay. So regional airlines work under mainlines. The name gives it away. It's regional. They typically only work domestic flights. They work into much smaller rural airports that can't fill up the large aircrafts. Mainly the purpose of a regional flight attendant or the regional carriers in general is to go to these smaller areas. So they have smaller aircrafts. Typically it's 1 to 2 flight attendants on an aircraft. I think regional airlines are great, whether you want to stay at them or let that be your starting point. I started at a regional and I'm now at a mainline, and frankly I appreciated my flight benefits at my regional more than my mainline, but that's another conversation for another day. Within the mainlines there's the big three. There's your Delta, your American United, and then your other mainline would be like Southwest, and then your budget carriers would be like Spirit, Frontier, JetBlue, and so forth and so on. Now, when you get hired by a commercial airline, I get this question a lot. You do not need to pay to go to training. You don't need any special degree in order to work at these commercial airlines. They are going to train you when they hire you. You are going to get a training date and they're going to train you. Even if you go from regional to mainline, even if you go from one mainline to another mainline, you're going to have to go through their specific training every single time. And it's not something you have to pay out of pocket for. Now, if you go the corporate or the private route, then you will have to pay for your own schooling to get certain certifications and clearances. Otherwise, if you see flight attendant training programs, I personally would just skip over them if you know you want to do commercial. Now, something you can do with me is like interview prep, training prep, learning which airline is right for you, just asking your general questions that I might not get to in a specific video because you have a very specific question to yourself. If you hop on a call with me, that's not like a whole training program. I've seen people tell me training programs that are like hundreds to thousands of dollars, and honestly, I just can't say that that's what you should do, because even if you go through that program and spend your hundreds or thousands of dollars in that program, you're still going to go to a commercial airline. They're still going to train you, and that training you have, even if it's on your resume, it doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things to that company because they're still going to put you through training. Now let's get into job requirements. Okay, so to even be hired as a flight attendant, to even possibly have the opportunity to, you're going to have to meet these minimal requirements. So at the regional level, you can actually be hired, depending on the airline, between 18 and 19. But to be at a mainline, you do have to be 21. There is no age limit in which you cannot apply where you are too old to be a flight attendant. I think in my last training class for my current airline, I think the oldest person in my training class was like in their 60s or 70s. And so it doesn't matter. If this is like a lifelong dream for you, you can still make it happen at any age. There's actually a number of people that I've met that this is their retirement job. It's like something they've always wanted to do. And so they finally chose to do it after they finish their whole, adult career. So that's perfectly fine. There is no age limit in which you cannot be a flight attendant anymore. You have to have at least a high school diploma or a GED, but you do not need any secondary education. You do not need a college degree. Now, it will make you a little more competitive, especially at certain airlines, but it is not a requirement. Now, is there a height requirement? Actually, in some cases, there are. So when I went to my regional and I actually had my CJA, I showed up on the day of training, they actually made me take my shoes off and took my height. When I went to my mainline, it wasn't that serious. That did not happen. There was no real height requirements there at my mainline. And I've been to the face-to-face and final interviews for multiple airlines, and at any major airline, I was not actually measured my height, but we did have reach tests. There was a simulated plane of a overhead bin and you had to be able to close it. The reason at the regional it's such a big thing, even more so on the tall end than the short end, is because, as I mentioned, it goes to smaller airports and smaller planes. And so it actually is like shorter planes. I remember telling passengers to duck like when they're walking into the door to board the plane. 6 foot height maximum or somewhere in that area for my regional, but it is because they are smaller aircrafts. Now when you get to mainline, that's not a thing. If you are 6 foot plus, that's not a problem. And on the shorter end, it's much less of a problem. I almost thought I wasn't. I'm 5'3.5" really, and even I was like a little nervous when they made me take my heels off and measure me, but it is what it is. It's cool. Clearly I got the job. There is no weights requirement, at least for US carriers. That is illegal in the US. I can't say that about other nations' airlines, but at least in the US, there is no weight requirement. I also had to go through like an emergency exit door during one of my interview processes, just to make sure you can get through that, and had to sit in the jump seat, make sure it buckles so that you're clearly not jumping around the aircraft or the cabin. You know, your safety is important. You also have to have a valid passport. I think you have to have your passport at your, if you make it to a face-to-face, I think you have to have your passport there. And if you don't have it there, you have to at least show proof that you've applied for it, and you have to have it by training. But I know people that literally got a passport just to get this job, and that's completely fine. But just make sure as soon as you're like, I think I might want to be a flight attendant one day, go ahead and apply for your passport. Now we're fast forwarding a little bit, but if you do end up getting hired, then you will have to be able to pass a drug test and a background screening. I have had plenty of questions asking, do I know what type of panel of testing it is, if they test for certain specific drugs. If it is a prescribed medication or something like that, you will want to disclose that to them. But if it's anything else, just stop doing it. And it's no judgment, but if you're like, okay, I think I want to be a flight attendant, and you're gonna apply, you might get the call in a month, you might get a call in 6 months, but to be on the safe side, just stop it and you'll be able to clear the test. And let's move on to the next point. Once you know you meet all of the minimal requirements, and now you know you want to work at a commercial carrier, because that's what the majority of this video is going to be about, then you're going to want to figure out what airlines you want to work for. Honestly, when you're first starting out, I totally am open to you applying to basically everybody. I mean, you're honestly, when you're entering the industry, you're not going to know why you're going to love one airline over another per se, but I do have a whole video on how to pick the best airline for you, and you can watch that video after so that you can kind of get a better idea of maybe what airline is better for you or not. Once you figure out which airline you want to work for, or you don't know and you just want to apply to a lot of them, go ahead and make a profile on their website under their jobs page. Okay, airlines aren't just like always hiring for flight attendants. They're not. They're hiring more because after 2020 and the airline industry came back way quicker than they expected, that airlines are hiring at a higher frequency than they have in the past. And almost every regional airline is kind of just having their open application. But as far as mainlines go, they're typically gonna hire 2 to 3 times a year. And you never know how long those applications are gonna be open for, but it's typically not more than 2 weeks. It's usually when they hit a certain number, they go ahead and close it. So you're going to want to apply as soon as you see the opening available. In order to help you do this at a quicker rate, go ahead and make a profile on any of the airlines you want to work for. This means you'll put in basically your name, you'll put your resume in there, and you'll answer a few questions. When you do this, basically when the application comes out, it's gonna be just a few clicks for you, as opposed to then setting up your whole profile and doing all of that. Questions that might be on your profile or in the application process is gonna be, do you have the ability to work in the US? Do you have the ability to work outside of the US? And are you willing to relocate? If you don't put yes for all of those, your application's not going to make it to the next level. Like, I'll just be completely honest with you. Even if you're not sure if you're willing to commute, just go ahead and say yes if you want the job. I'm gonna be completely honest, because either you're gonna commute or you can say a thanks but no thanks to them if you get the job. So since I mentioned that the airlines are not always hiring, the best ways to know when they are hiring is to join communities on Facebook. That was the best way for me to find out. They send out alerts basically when airlines are hiring, and so when you see the notification, immediately go to the apply button and put in your application. Now, let's say you apply, you get a assessment. That's typically the second step of application process. The process is typically 3 to 5 steps depending on what carrier you are applying to. So there's the simple application. The next thing is typically an assessment. Now, my best advice for the assessment is enter as honestly and quickly as possible. I'm gonna leave that there. Completed your assessment and they say we either wanna get on a call with you or do a virtual interview. Now, the virtual interview can go a few different ways. It can either be a proctor, so you're gonna be like sent a link, you're gonna see like a recording of a flight attendant basically giving you the question, and then you have to record your response. That's one way it might happen. Or it might be a virtual interview, so it might be you as one person and another flight attendant from that airline, or a panel of flight attendants from that airline doing the interview with you through like Zoom or just some way virtually. Or it might be a group virtual interview where you are one of like 20 people in this interview, and you're gonna be basically given one question that you were told to answer, and even when everybody else is answering their questions, you still have to be like on camera and smiling and look happy to be there, okay? Now, if you get past that step, which would be the third step, then you will typically go to your face-to-face. Now, with the face-to-face, airlines will typically fly you out to whatever base they are doing the face-to-face at. My biggest advice is when you're on that flight, if they're flying you in, when you're on that flight, watch every single thing the flight attendants are doing. Every single thing. Look at how they set up their cart. Look at how they greet you when they board. Look at what they do during service. Look at how often they come through the aisles. Look at how they're dressed. Look at how they're manicured. Observe them in their entirety when you were on that flight. Now, if you are local and you are going to your face-to-face, just do a quick YouTube video. Even like one of my regular vlogs, if you're going to an interview with my airline, watch one of my vlogs and kind of just see how I operate, what I'm dressed like, and things like that, to kind of get an idea of what it's like when I'm at work, because I think it's very beneficial for you to go into the interview already in the mindset of being able to see yourself in that role. Now, not every carrier is going to give you the job on the spot. Oftentimes they do, but if you leave the interview, the face-to-face interview, and you weren't given the job on the spot, it doesn't necessarily mean you didn't get it. If they give you a time period like, oh, we'll reach back out to you in 5 business days, within the next 3 weeks, whatever the time frame is, if they say that time, give them that time. If you hear nothing back in that time, then it is likely that you didn't get the position. Oftentimes we say in the industry, it's better to hear nothing than a no. But when you get all the way to the face-to-face, then, and you still don't hear anything after the time frame that they gave you, then wait the time frame that is written out for you to reapply. For some airlines, it's 3 months. For some airlines, it's 6 months. If you know dead set that you want to work for that airline, then wait that time period and reapply. If you know it's something you want, please keep reapplying. Let's say that face-to-face, you're given a CJO. A CJO is a contingent job offer. Contingent, okay? The word contingent means it's not a job offer yet. It's contingent on you making it through training. So your training date isn't your hire date. Your graduation date is your hire date, because that's the day that you finally completed all of your training and the company has actually hired you now. The whole time you're in training, you're actually still in your interview process. You don't have the job yet until they put those wings on you and you're at graduation. Until then, you still need to have a smile on your face. You still need to be studying. You still need to be in interview mode because you're actually still in the process until graduation day. So let's say you get this training date, right? Trainings can range from 3 weeks to 8 weeks depending on what carrier you go to. Now, when I went through regional training, it was very unique because I was there during the panorama. Okay, and so our training process was very, very different. And even when I came to mainline training now, I saw how different it was. I still think I had great training opportunity, but our training was 32 days and you had 2 days off. That's it. You didn't have weekends off. We had a random Thursday and a random day like 2 weeks later. Now, when I came to mainline, it was 4 weeks and we had weekends off, and it was so much more laid back, I'll be honest. Regional, it was paid during training. We got paid once halfway through and once after. At mainline, we were provided a stipend after training, but we were provided a meal card during training to pay for our food. During both of those trainings, all of my accommodations were fully paid for. They put you up in a hotel. They're going to fly you to training. Now, think about 3 to 8 weeks of not working, whatever job you were currently working. In training, you're gonna be gone from 8 to 12 hours. Like, it's being basically in a crash course. Like if you're in summer semester, like a quarter of college, then that's basically what it's like. It's a crash course. So even when you're not in class, you're studying. And then when you're not studying or in class, you're sleeping. Please, like I said, remember, the interview process is still going on while you're in training. So please don't act up in training because they will send you home. And you would hate to be that person that gets sent home for something stupid or minuscule or childish or whatever. And it happens. It happens. So just be very mindful. You're still in that interview process, even all the way through training until graduation day, up until graduation day, actually. Now, even to prep for training is a process within itself. I have a whole video on what not to do before flight attendant training, and I think it's actually a very beneficial video. Probably will do a new version of that video with some updated things, but my biggest thing is to not stress about training. Training isn't there to trick you. They are actually investing money in you at this point. They want you to graduate. They want you to work for them. They like you at this point. They gave you a CJO. They want you to finish training. So don't go into it like, oh, it's the super hard thing. You're never gonna pass. You got it. They want you, and you just have to follow the instructions and make it to graduation day. That's really it. They're going to give you all the materials you need to pass. They're going to give you multiple opportunities to pass. You just have to follow the road that they literally make for you. That is a path of success. And then you can get to graduation and you can be a flight attendant. I think that is everything that I have for y'all. I do prep calls for interviews, for training. I recently got an email from one of the ladies that I have been working with, and we have had multiple calls, and we'll be doing more calls to prep her for training, but she got her CGO and I'm super excited for her. If you want a success story like that, you can book a call with me as well, and you can get prepared to be a flight attendant in 2024. I'm so excited to see you in the skies. If you're new here, make sure that you subscribe. If you learned anything new, make sure you subscribe. We're on the road to 10K in the Sky Fam. Until next time, bye Sky Fam. So had to go through I also had, can you hear me talking? I